What's up, guys? Welcome back to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Nvidia stock, ticker symbol NVDA, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Tuesday, March 5th. Well, guys, Nvidia stock here today up $29.58 a share in regular trading hours, 3.6%, another new all-time high as well here today for Nvidia. We got quite the upside trend day and then a little bit of a fade here into the after hours, essentially flat after hours, down about a point. Listen, anything after hours, assuming volume is the way it is 99% of the time, which is very low, we have to take it with a grain of salt. The only exception to that, in my opinion, is if we have an earnings, catalyst or something where volume is extremely high, matching that of what is expected in like the morning or something. So let's take a look here at this name. I want to start with Nvidia today by taking a quick look at the 1-minute chart. Listen, I'm a scalper. It's what I do every day. So just briefly, I always like to kind of cruise through some of the names. I'm typically watching all of these names all day anyway. However, I like to see, were there any opportunities to generate some revenue that I may have missed that I can look at maybe replicating tomorrow. Now, as far as intraday opportunities are concerned, especially on blue chip stocks, my playbook is very picky. There are not a ton of setups on blue chips that have substantial edge, but there are some. One of those is like a repeat offender setup. And I'll tell you, I was looking at this in this region. It's just way too sloppy. We were seeing very minimal respect off of that 2 standard deviation band from volume weighted average price. I had to overlook that setup today. But you guys, that gives you an idea of the kind of setups that I'm looking for in blue chips that I know have edge, that I forward tested through flat markets, sideways markets, right? Incredible bull markets and horrendous bear markets, and it is retained edge through all market environments. And if I ever find that through my statistics it's losing edge, I'll push it to the side until it comes back. But for now, it's very much so in play. But that being said, let's move on here from the intraday mentality and start here on the 5-minute with kind of our daily volume profile analysis ritual. Okay, by the way, if you're new here, you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. Nvidia is one of the stocks that I cover every single day, so please subscribe and I'll do my best to continue to provide you value every day. So you guys know what I'm looking for here on the 5-minute. We do this every single day. I'm trying to pull out any bias that the market had from a big sample size perspective. So what I'm looking for, an obvious change in volume that is kind of outside of the context of what would be expected at that time of day, that also correlates with a big move, or I should say an obvious move in stock price. Doesn't necessarily have to be so big. Okay, so for me, I'm kind of looking at this trend that started kind of like noon Eastern time. This is my chart's on Central. Okay, it kind of topped out right around 2:40 Eastern time. And if we look at the volume profile during that time, you can see here that we did see, this is actually interesting, we saw an increase and a sustained increase in volume during that time, and that actually sustained itself for the majority of the rest of the day. Now, that is not shocking. Okay, it's not like, wow, that's such an obvious volume profile, but it is there. Because we saw a fade, and typically you'd expect kind of this U shape in volume, more or less, right? You expect big volume off the open. That's not out of the ordinary. Like, yeah, we saw these 2 green candles, 2 candles, consecutive candles, not really enough because we already expect this. It's within the context of what is expected at that time of day. You typically see a decrease, and then there's a bowl shape, right? And then the increase into the close. We popped above what's expected. This is usually a very kind of like dead time of day in terms of volume. Now, bulls, I got to be honest with you. The truth is, this isn't something that I would go into a chat room and start screaming and shouting about. But it is there, right? It's worth being aware of, if nothing else, and just quietly aware of. Just know, okay, in that moment, for whatever reason, a bigger sample size of the market agreed that Nvidia belonged higher than 853. And you had buyers willing to offer that thing up, heading up toward 870. All right. Now, the stock did fade to essentially, really the beginning of that move into the close. However, if we look at the volume, you got a little bit of a pop, but it was well within what's expected during that time of day. So an interesting, a little bit of a muted analysis here on the 5-minute today in terms of volume profile, but an interesting one nonetheless. Let's move on here to the 30-minute chart and start taking a look at levels that are obvious, the self-fulfilling prophecy, psychological levels heading into tomorrow. Okay, so of course you guys know I'm using the most popular indicators on the most popular time frames. That's all I'm interested in. Where are the most eyeballs? What has the most psychology around it? And where will the decisions be made? Now, for me, I'm looking at this 30-minute chart, and there are levels that kind of trump what we're looking at here, but we have to stay contextual to each chart. And then once we get to the end, I mean, yes, I'd like if you watch the whole video, of course, that's great. But the reason this channel is so straightforward is because I'm providing value with what I believe works, what I believe has edge if it's looked at in the proper way. And of course, risk is always managed. So I do think it's really important to finish these videos. I keep them relatively short for a reason, to actually get the full picture, and then you can kind of put it all in your bucket and decide, does it float or does it sink? And then you can look at making an educated decision on your own. So that being said, here on the 30-minute chart, the nearest level is that 50 period right around 834 as of right now. Okay, that's about a 2.5% downside move away, 2.6%. So that is well within a single day's move on Nvidia. So bulls, any downside test at all of that 50 period on the 30-minute, I would love to see a clean bounce move upside away from that level. But here's the key. On average volume, ideally above average volume. Okay, because that is more definitive. If we were to see a hold of that level, a bounce away on lower than average volume, I can't say I'd be unsettled because it's just one factor again, but I wouldn't be thrilled about that. Bears, really simple here. Your goal on the 30-minute chart tomorrow is ideally to crack downside below the 50 period, but do so on high volume. Again, make that a definitive break on the on the 50 period on the 30-minute chart. But bulls, ideally we wouldn't see a retest of that at all. You would love to see this curl upside, ideally get above 850. That'd be a great move. This thing is moving quickly. It moved about 30 points here today, something around there. And so that's well within reason that tomorrow we see the 50 period on the 30-minute get above 850. A psychological level, just add a psychological barrier above that, strengthen that level. All right. The 4-hour chart, let's move on here. You can see those moving averages aren't going to be nearly as relevant here on the 4-hour chart because those moving averages take longer to get feet up underneath the move. So truthfully, the daily is going to tell us the real story, but here on the 4-hour, I have to watch, and you can see that the 50 period is starting to curl upside at a more aggressive rate. I would love to see that get above the psychological level of $800 a share just ASAP. That's what I'm watching if I'm a bull. Bears, you want to see that thing flatten out and not get above 8. Now let's get to the most exciting, you could almost say the most boring, but also the most exciting chart. This is where the magic happens, I think. The daily. This is the most important chart because it always paints the most clear image. Okay, understand this isn't going to show after hours movement. However, as of right now, there's not a ton of after hours movement. It's up about 5 points, a little bit more than when we started the video. So, but again, take it with a grain of salt because it's going to be on low volume. But it's always better to have it up than flat or down if you're a bull. Of course, it is the real price. Really clear story here on Nvidia if I'm a bull. Any retest of 850, I'm going to want to see that hold. I'm watching the all-time high, but honestly, 900, you can say as of, okay, the closing price on Nvidia was about 852. Let's just go in that rough region, about 853, fine. That's about a 5.5% move away, around there, about a 5.5% upside move. Listen, it's within a day's move of Nvidia. It would be a more volatile day, but any test of 850 I want to see hold, and then really I'm kind of looking, can we use that as a trampoline to break through the all-time high and bust up toward $900 a share? Because I think that's really the next round number everybody's watching. It's very obvious. Now, to the downside, yeah, it's a little bit of a move away. Bears, I think your target is really number one, get back below 850. And I know a lot of you have your eyes, maybe you have your heart set on $800 a share. Understand it is, again, kind of a 6.2% move away. It's within a day's reasonable move on Nvidia. We've seen crazier things, but again, that's a more volatile day. But bears, being that you kind of like, I don't want to say lost, but you kind of lost 850 today. Priority number one, get back below $850 a share, and then use that as kind of a ceiling, hard resistance to help fade the stock back down toward 8 and ideally get back down below 8 as quickly as possible. That'd be a beautiful thing if you're a bear. Okay, now let's take a look here at what was the options bias on Nvidia today. What were the traders thinking? How are they positioning themselves heading into tomorrow, Tuesday? So we had 2.09 million total contracts traded, 1.27 million calls, and about 826,000 puts. So we are seeing a call side bias here in the chain on Nvidia today. But if we break this down by time frame, okay, you can see here that every single delta range is weighted to the call side except for 0 to 20, which are going to be those short-term speculators, which is slightly weighted to the put side, 477,000 puts and 431,000 calls. So we're seeing more of the midterm and longer-term outlook options traders leaning to the call side, but the very short-term, very far out of the money, are leaning just slightly bearish. Not overwhelming at all, but a small bias to the put side in the very short term. Overall ratio is leaning call side heavy. Listen, if you got value out of this video, please subscribe to the channel. I'm covering Nvidia every single day. I appreciate it, and I'll see you tomorrow.